Remember when everyone thought we were going into a recession? The S&P 500 was going to $3,000. Bitcoin was essentially going to zero for the 100th time. Sentiment has been on a roller coaster. It is incredible to watch in real time. It really is. In my recent videos, I've mentioned a lot about the Fed, the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, rate cuts, rate hikes, quantitative tightening, quantitative easing, money printing. All of the ingredients that are required to determine what the direction of the market is going. Is it going up? Is it going down? Those things determine where we are going in the short term. Well, in this video, I want to go over all of those ingredients in more detail because I want to make things unequivocally clear for everybody watching and why the Federal Reserve is one of the most important entities in the world because they determine the direction where the market is going to go. And for the last 3 to 4 weeks, it has only seemed to be going in the negative direction. So after this March FOMC meeting, will things turn around? Will the Fed loosen monetary policy? We will find out. So let's get into it. Let's briefly talk about the Fed. Who's the Fed? When were they created? Why were they created? And why are they so important to the market today? The Fed was created on December 13th, 1913, when the Federal Reserve Act was signed into law. It was established to provide the US with a more stable and flexible monetary and financial system. Well, I mean, I think they got the flexible part right, but the stable part, the stability part, I think that needs a little bit more work. And they've only had about 100 years, but that's neither here nor there. The Fed is arguably one of the most powerful entities in the world by far, and it is not even close. They are the main driver behind what we call the business cycle. They are essentially responsible for monetary policy. So the federal funds rates, they are responsible for adjusting the short-term rates. They are responsible for open market operations, quantitative easing, quantitative tightening, and they are responsible for adjusting the reserve requirements for banks. And the last time I checked, in 2020, those reserve requirements were set to 0. So that's where we are today. They are also responsible for price stability, maximizing employment, regulating banks, and maintaining financial stability. If I was to give the Federal Reserve a rating at this point, man, I'd probably give them an F. I mean, if we could give them something lower, I would, but F is kind of the lowest you can get. It's a fail. Yeah, they're not doing the best job, but again, that's the Federal Reserve in a nutshell. Okay, this is all cool and all, like the Federal Reserve, the Fed, that's cool, but what the hell does that have to do with traditional markets and crypto and Bitcoin? As of today, we are in a tight monetary policy regime, meaning interest rates are incredibly elevated. We have some of the highest rates we've seen in, I don't even know how long, a very long time, decades, years? Who knows? And we have quantitative tightening going on in full effect, meaning the Federal Reserve is trying to reduce its balance sheet by selling assets, mainly government bonds, to other banks. The interest rates that the Fed controls is mainly the federal funds rate, FFR. And this is the interest rate where banks lend excess reserves to other banks overnight, which is why it's called, in some cases, the overnight rate. This influences borrowing costs across the economy, including mortgage rates, credit cards, lines of credits, you name it. High interest rates makes borrowing incredibly expensive. Like think about it for a second. If interest rates are incredibly high, are you going to go out and buy that new car? Are you going to go out and buy that new house? Are you going to go out and ask for a loan to do that renovation to your house? Are you going to go out and ask for a home equity line of credit? Are you going to go out and ask for a business loan to expand your business when interest rates are incredibly high? The answer is absolutely no. Why? Because just 4 years ago, the interest rates were essentially near zero. ZERP. Zero interest rate policy. So why would you go out when interest rates are nearly 4 or 5% when that doesn't make any sense? So no, having high interest rates deters consumers and business owners and corporations from borrowing money to do all the great things that we love to do when we have an excess and abundance of money. Spend money on nonsense if you're a consumer, or spend money on expanding the business if you are a corporation. Now, what does this do in effect? Like, who cares, right? Like, let's get to the so what part. It slows economic activity. It slows economic growth. It reduces gross domestic product. Why? Because when we are in a loose monetary policy, so when we have low interest rates, what happens? Consumers can get all these loans. They can go out and buy all these things. They can buy houses. They can buy cars. They can buy assets. They can buy goods and services from where? From corporations. And what happens to those corporations? Those corporations report earnings. If consumers are buying and buying and spending money, and it's going to all of these corporations, what happens? Gross domestic product, or the economic activity, expands. Is that happening right now as of today with high interest rates? Absolutely not. So when the Fed essentially slashes these rates, and they will slash these rates because it happens every single time. That is why we have what is called a boom and a bust cycle. When we have a boom, interest rates are incredibly low. Cost of borrowing is incredibly low. And when we have bust cycles, interest rates are skyrocketing. Economic activity is slowing down. Nobody wants to borrow any money. Nobody wants to buy any. Everybody wants to save money because their money goes a lot further when they're saving as opposed to spending money that they don't otherwise have. So that is the federal funds rate in a nutshell. However, the federal funds rate is only one piece of the puzzle. The other piece is open market operations, like I mentioned earlier in the video, where we have quantitative tightening, or QT, and quantitative easing, or QE. And these are incredibly important tools. Why? Because they control the liquidity in the economy. And controlling the liquidity in the economy is just as important, if not a little bit more important, than controlling the federal funds rate. Why? We'll get there.
2 seconds later.
Because risk on assets, tech stocks, crypto, altcoins, Bitcoin, all those risky assets, they thrive on excess liquidity in the economy. When all the liquidity is dried up and the Fed is doing quantitative tightening and it's sucking the liquidity out of the system, what is the first thing that any rational investor or speculator will do? They will dump all of their risky assets. So all those AI stocks, Nvidia, the Magnificent Seven, Bitcoin, altcoins, Ethereum, Chainlink, all of those cryptocurrencies, I'm sorry, they're going to be one of the first things to get dumped because, again, they are the riskiest assets. So when financial conditions tighten a lot and there's not much liquidity in the system, you can't really borrow a lot of money, there's not a lot of money flowing around in the system. Again, you don't want your money just stuck in these risky assets. No, you want to take your money and you want to put it in something that's a lot more safe, like gold, like treasury bills. When the Fed resumed QT in 2022 after an explosive 2020-2021, thanks to our little pal we like to call, can we still say that word? The C word?
You need to leave.
Not that C word, relax. COVID? Yeah, when that happened, inflation went, to 9-10%? Something completely unprecedented. And the Fed had to be like, whoa, so I guess it's not transitory, so let's just start raising the rates, and let's QE, thing of the past, QT in full force. That happened in 2022. I think it happened in June of 2022. So essentially, like I said, the Fed was sucking the liquidity out of the system by reducing its balance sheet. And how does it reduce its balance sheet? By selling government bonds to banks. Quantitative tightening, or QT, it slows economic growth. I already mentioned this before when I was talking about interest rates. Now, what about QE, quantitative easing? Well, obviously it does the opposite. Instead of reducing their balance sheet, they're expanding the balance sheet. They are now buying government bonds. They are adding liquidity to the system. So when they buy government bonds from other banks, guess what? All that money that banks are now buying from the Federal Reserve in the forms of government bonds, they can now sell that excess money in the form of things that we know, like mortgages, loans, personal loans, lines of credit, home equity lines of credit, business loans, you name it. And that is where the economy starts to boom because now everybody feels richer. When you have QE, you typically also have low interest rates. The two go hand in hand. And this is why I have been preaching so heavily that this next FOMC meeting on March 19th, on Wednesday, March 19th, is so critical because look what's happened to the market in the last 3 to 4 weeks. The S&P 500 was down about 10% in 3 weeks. Absolutely crazy. Bitcoin down 30%. Nothing new there. But we went from $109,000 all the way down to $76,000 in such a short period of time as well. So again, this meeting is so important. The Fed is not going to be lowering rates. That's not going to happen. But what the market is waiting in anticipation for is whether or not the Federal Reserve is going to be putting an end to quantitative tightening. So are they going to stop sucking liquidity out of the system? They're not going to resume QE. That doesn't happen for at least, 3 to 12 months. But ending quantitative tightening is incredibly important. And not only QT, but are they also going to hint at the fact that they're going to have more rate cuts than they anticipated in 2025? My answer is yes. It's glaringly obvious. Economic data is coming in a lot weaker than anticipated. So it's almost like the economy was being propped up over the last 2 years. So the economy wasn't as strong as it appeared to be. So in summary, quantitative easing is when the Fed is buying assets. It is buying government bonds. That equals more money, lower rates, and economic stimulus. Quantitative tightening is when the Fed is selling assets. It is selling government bonds. That equals less money, higher interest rates, and slower economic activity. Without looser monetary policy, the market is going to continue to decline. We are already down so much. Sentiment has never been worse. In fact, sentiment is so bad, we haven't seen it this bad since the COVID crash in 2020 and since the great financial crisis in 2008. That is how bad sentiment is, yet the S&P 500 is only down 10% and Bitcoin's only down about 25%. Does it make any sense? Absolutely not. We had a really good sell-off on Tuesday, the day before the FOMC meeting on Wednesday. And honestly, that happens every single time. The market just wants to de-risk. They don't want to anticipate. They don't want to guess. They just want to get themselves in a position where, okay, when the meeting happens on Wednesday, when the meeting happens on March 19th, depending on the rhetoric of Jerome Powell, the Fed chair, that will determine the direction of the market. What do I think will happen? Like I said, no interest rates, not happening. But will they provide some positive dovish forward guidance for more interest rate cuts into the future? 100%. In fact, I think we will get interest rate cuts as early as May. As early as May. Will they NQT? 60% yes, 40% no. And if they don't NQT on the meeting in March, they will 100% be ending QT in May. Believe that. So what is my advice to you? What should you do? Sell everything and then wait for... No, my advice to you, don't do anything. Don't sell, don't buy, don't trade, don't try to time the market, don't try to anticipate what Jerome Powell is going to do. Sit on your hands, go pop some popcorn, and just let the market do what the market does. And hey, I could be completely wrong. The Fed could say, F y'all, I ain't doing QT, I'm not doing QT anytime soon. There will be no rate cuts. I think that's likely. No. But again, non-zero chance, anything can happen. And if that does happen, the market is going to go much lower. Because after the Trump pump in November and December, the Fed was like, yo, y'all got to relax. So we had one of the most hawkish FOMC meetings in December that we have received in a very long time. And the market went from this to, wow, yeah, that's where we just completely tanked. And we're like, everyone was like, what the heck is going on? So do I think the opposite will happen this time, given the market turbulence and given the uncertainty and the doubt? Yes, the opposite will happen. I think the Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell will be incredibly dovish during this meeting. And that's all I got for y'all. As always, I thank you for yet another opportunity to share my thoughts and my insights. I greatly appreciate it. If you learned something, let me know down below in the comment section. Leave something nice or leave something mean. Any engagement is positive engagement in my eyes. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I look forward to the next one. And remember, do nothing. Sit on your hands, pop your popcorn, and let the market do what the market needs to do. BK out.